I need. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to one more webinar of Inspire India, Ultra Cycling. And we have a special guest today who are going to be giving us their inputs and insights. So I'm just going to briefly introduce our special guest to everybody and Team Access, and then I'll start with my session. So to introduce everybody, this is Team Access. The coach Santosh Pawar and Vishal Pawar, and I think I mentioned in my Instagram post recently that both of them are pro racing legends in India, in Pune, of course, much respected. Their father, and they come from a family which has been part of the pro racing legacy building in India from way back. Their father, Dashrath Pawar, very, very well known, amazing person. I had the good fortune to interact with him for a few years before he passed away. Santosh and Vishal's uncle also was into racing. If you go to their house, it's like a mini museum of memorabilia of the racing scene in India from decades before.
Interesting
because we hardly know much. Can I request everybody to please mute until the Q&A starts? Thank you. Yeah. So Vishal and Santosh are the coaches for Team Access. They've also been racing themselves in the relay teams at Deccan Cliffhanger. Hi, someone is still not muted. Can you please keep everybody on mute, please?
Kavita Mundal is not mute.
Sorry.
Just check your own thing. I don't want to have to check everybody's individually. Just everybody check your own and make sure it's on mute. Thank you. Yeah, so Team Access has been participating in Deccan Cliffhanger since 2015. And every year they put up a team, either a relay team or 4 to last year it was even 2 people. And they've also had Ashish Joshi, who was a part of the relay team, attempt Deccan Cliffhanger solo after that. And last year in 2019, when Deccan Cliffhanger was held, they actually had 2 relay teams and Ashish participating in solo. So they've been engaged, they've been very much Deccan Cliffhanger groupies, as we call them, and also they themselves have evolved along with Deccan Cliffhanger as DC has evolved. So please welcome Santosh Pawar, Ashish Joshi, and Maithili Jog. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for wanting to share your insights with us. Okay, shall we? Sorry, I'm just going to check. Yeah. Just a couple of things before I start. Like I said, everybody mics on mute and keep a notepad and pen handy like we did last time. If you have any questions or queries during the seminar while a speaker is talking, just make a note of it, and Q&A will be opened up at the end of the session where you can just put up your hand on the on your Zoom window, and I'll call in one by one the questions. Don't unmute and start answering yourself. It can get a little confusing then. And while the speakers are speaking, try not to interrupt at all. Keep your questions for later on. It may get answered during the session itself. Yeah, thank you. I hope all of you have a lot to take away on how to build your team strategies. Just give me one moment. Somebody's messaging me asking to be let in. I'm just gonna. Yeah. Okay. So we've got I'm going to have a 2-part meeting on relay team, Ram style relay team. I'm going to do a more generic approach to Ram style racing, relay racing, which will be, which will give you strategy and planning inputs that you can apply to any race of any distance. And then Team Access is going to share their insights, particularly in relationship to Deccan Cliffhanger. Yeah, I'm going to start the screen share. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Excuse me while I keep admitting people into the thing. All right. Yeah. So, yeah, just to share with you my own experience with relay team. So I had the one and the only time that I was able to take part in Deccan Cliffhanger was in the first edition, where I was a member of a three-member team. Three of us raced DC in 29 hours and 18 minutes. And one moment. Yeah. That was the last time that I was able to do it, because after that, DC just got bigger and bigger, and there was no scope that I was going to be able to race again or do anything of the sort in my own races. So that was one experience of mine as a racer. It was an interesting experience. If we get chance to do some storytelling and sharing, I'll tell you about our experience at DC. We had only one crew member. Just a minute. I don't know why the laptop is not responding. Okay. Um, Besides being a racer in a relay team, that one time I also was a crew member or a crew chief on multiple occasions at Race Across America twice with
युद्धाचं झालं युद्धाचं झालं
and mute please. Hey guys,
तोंड पुसू परिताय कुणाला फोन लावलाय दादू
yeah. Hopefully that will stop happening. Okay. So some of my relay team experience as a crew and a crew chief was for in the Race Across America 2013 was my first experience with a team of four, which was an American team. Then I did RAM 2015 with the team of four again. I did race around Europe 2015 with a team of two people who was from UK. And then the last time that I crewed, and I said, okay, I'm done with my crewing now. My best experience so far, and the last one was race around Austria in 2017 with a team of two from India, which was Bharat Pannu and Darshan Dubey. And we had a great team. We will be talking in more detail about their how we did that. So this seminar is going to deal, I'm going to deal mainly with developing a relay team strategy. And so what do we say, what do we mean when we talk about strategies? So strategy is basically your understanding of your environment, which is in this situation, it's a race, and the resources that you have to achieve your goals, how you build that. First, you need to understand your environment, which is the race, understand your racers, and then what is your goal within this race, within this environment. That's how you build a strategy. And from that strategy, you build a race plan. And the race plan is what is going to help you to execute your goal during the event. So these are the two main areas that we're going to deal with. So when we talk about understanding the environment, your environment in this case is a race, and different races have they're different environments in the sense that the distance is different, your time limit is different, because of which the average that you have to meet, and the average, your target, or your the target average that you have to maintain during the race will be an important number for you to remember throughout, while you're building your plan and later on when you're racing also, because everything builds up around that. So, for example, I've given over here DC, which is a 640-kilometer race in 28 hours for the all-men team. The average to be maintained is 23 kmph. Now, when I'm talking about the average here, I'm talking about the minimum average required. This is not your target average. Your target average will depend on what you decide you want to do. At Ultra Spy, so as the distances increase, your average required to be maintained throughout the race generally reduces. That's the pattern. There are differences within this. I'll show you a little bit more on that. So at Ultra Spice, for example, for the 1200 kilometer, the team average required is 20 kmph. And if you're doing the 1750 kilometer race at Ultra Spice, your team average needs to be 18 kmph. So racers will be moving faster than that. There may be off saddle time. Even in relay races, you can have off saddle time. So you need to plan a little bit around that. At Race Around Austria, 2,200 kilometers, the average required is 20 kmph. And now I'll come to another factor here, which is the terrain. So when you talk about 20 kmph and 23 kmph, just bear in mind that these are averages that you have to maintain in different terrain. Different challenges will be there. Race Around Europe, interestingly, it's a 4,700 kilometer race, but the average required is only 16 kmph. It's a fairly slow paced race. RAM, however, for team 5,000 kilometers, the RAM cutoff is eight days, which is 26 kmph. So that's a pretty high average that needs to be maintained at RAM. So when you start to, your goals for each of your race will depend upon these things, the average target that you have to maintain. For example, I'll give you an example now at Race Around Austria, for example, the two-person team average that we had to do was fairly fast-paced. We had to make sure that Bharat and Darshan, and they themselves had a target which was, they wanted to finish in under 90 hours, which was even higher, this thing. I think we finished somewhere in between that and the cutoff. But for example, at Race Around Austria over here, which we had 12 days to do it, the whole strategy was completely different because they had a lot more time. So we would have picnic lunches together on the side of the road. The two racers did not do very fast changes. They did long changes. You know, they would cycle for a few hours at a time. Why this makes a difference is when you are doing a faster, intense relay race, you're generally going to be planning on doing shorter pulls. Each racer is on the road for a shorter, higher intensity, faster period of time. Because I'll tell you why this is a huge factor in going fast or going slow. For slower races, you can take longer pulls, and longer pulls invariably slow down your overall average. The other difference that will come up is when you're planning for a short distance race, for example, Deccan Cliffhanger, which is 640 kilometers, a little over 1 day, or you're planning for a long race. So the difference for in Deccan Cliffhanger is that you're not planning for the racers to take long sleep breaks. They'll be taking, it's one night that you have to be on the road. And during that one night, each racer will take a maximum 1.5 hours or 2 hours of sleep during the night. Whereas if you're doing something like Race Around Austria or Race Around America, you have to make sure that each racer is getting a long period of time every day to be able to sleep fully and be able to perform the very next day. So this is where the difference comes in between what you're planning for, whether it's a short or a long race. Once you've understood this basic environment of your race, the other thing, these are tangibles. This will be there on the website and you can do this on a calculator. The other things to understand are the intangibles. What are the race challenges? So one of the important challenges of a race is the terrain. What kind of terrain you have to face? Where does that terrain come during your race duration? Does it come in the beginning, like we talked about how at Deccan Cliffhanger, um, last year's race route appeared to be easier than the Mahabaleshwar race, but the challenge came late in the race when people were tired instead of in the beginning of the race when you climb Mahabaleshwar on the other routes. So it's not just terrain in terms of how many meters of elevation gain in the race, but where are your climbs, where are your flats, where are other challenges. You can have a flat terrain with high exposure during, like we see this in DC, because DC, though it's a very short race, has many different kinds of challenges in terms of terrain and climate being the next thing that you have to factor in. So the flat stretch of DC invariably comes during high noon and afternoon hot hours, and racers are exposed to sun during long part of the day when they're performing. Uh, so the challenge here is to keep them hydrated and to keep them cool also. So to not have core temperatures rising above a certain point where they can't perform. So these kind of challenges have to be understood. You have to look at your route in detail, understand what you're going through, what kind of climate zones you're going to be going through. Again, to return to DC again, DC actually goes through different kinds of climate zones, because you climb up to Mahabaleshwar, which can be cold even during the daytime on certain winter days. And then you descend down to this flat terrain, which can be the hottest part of the day. And then you enter a a cold, humid forest in the nighttime hours. So all these things need to be understood when you do your research on your race. And the other thing, of course, is the altitude. So if we're talking about a race like, say, Great Himalayan, then the challenge comes with the altitude. Yeah. This is just, I'm not going to, go into details on this, but generally this is the metrics of any races. This will give you a little idea about what you're aiming for. This is there on the Inspire India website. You can always go and take a look at it later. But just to give you an idea of, different races. So Deccan Cliffhanger, the distance and the elevation gain in meters per kilometers is 8.9. I've collated this data from various different races across the world. And so compared to the elevation gain in meters per kilometer to the average that you're required to maintain at DC, then say Ultra Spice, then you have the Great Himalayan, then you can see the Dolomitica is one of the 24 meters of elevation gain per kilometer. That's really high, and the average required over there is actually higher than that I have given for the Great Himalayan or for the Ultra Spice. Not for the Ultra Spice, sorry, Ultra Spice is less. Similarly, they're sequenced according to the distance. These are races of 700 to 1,000 kilometers. These are 1,000 kilometers upwards. So you can see how the racing averages start to reduce as the distance increases. But you have to factor in the elevation gain also with respect to this. Yeah, so you can make out which are the tougher races and things. So Ultra Spice 1750, for example, average elevation gain is on the high side comparative to the other races of that distance. Race across America has got less actually. So these are metrics that, I mean, the reason why I'm just telling you this is that you just need to, for whichever race you're doing, get hold of this data and understand this. This is just your basic understanding of the environment that you are going to be performing in. So once you've got this, once you've understood what is the average, what is the minimum average speed that a race requires you to maintain, and then you decide on other things, which is, first of all, what is your goal in this race? What are you aiming for? So to give you a small idea of how much goals can vary, we have over here an example of two different 8-person teams at Race Across America. All men, both teams are all men. The record was held by Team Viasat at 5 days, 5 hours, and 5 minutes. which is an average of 40 kmph that they maintained for that entire 5 days for 5,000 kilometers around across America. And on the other side, you have another 8-person team, which was from Ireland. I actually met this team. And they had decided that they are going to race without any crew. So it was only these 8 people, their vans or whatever they had, and their equipment. And they took turns in crewing, driving, navigating. Man, I can't imagine how difficult this must be to do this, that you're racing also, and then you get off your race duty, and then you're doing all these other things as well. So it would be very interesting to see how they had laid out their plan for this. But this is the first time ever that RAM has been done with no crew at all by a team. So they made history by doing this. So you can make out now that the approaches were completely different. So they're going to develop. So it's 8-people team at the same race. So the environment is the same. The number of resource material you have is also identical, but their strategies of how they do their racer rotation and their plan is going to be completely different from each other. So Team Viasat, to set a 40 kmph average across 5,000 kilometers, I actually heard their crew chief telling us how he did it at the RAM seminar. They were doing pulls of, less than 10 to 12 minutes on average. No racer was on their bike for more than 10 to 12 minutes at a time. It's an insanely intense approach, but their target was very clear. They were going to set the record. Their record has stood for these 6-7 years. In 2018, it was broken by another team, but the team managed to shave off just a little more than an hour from their timing. Abhi, when you set a record like this, 5 days and 5 hours across America, how much can this be shaved? In fact, Team Viasat attempted to break their own record in another year. 2017, they attempted to break their own record and were unable to do it. So I think they did 5 days and 17 hours or something. So this was this, one thing where they went for it. So you can see even the way they raced was basically time TT bikes. Most of the time in this particular photograph, it's regular wheels, but most of the time they had time trial wheels also, time trial helmets. They're doing it time trial style. And you could see the crew as well. The crew, every 10 to 12 minutes, you're putting a new racer on the road, picking up this one, picking up their equipment. And the other car has already gone, in 10 to 12 minutes. If they're covering at 40 kmph, means in 10 minutes, they would be covering about 7 or 8 kilometers, I think. So they're jumping that. There's one car with the new racer, fresh racer, has already gone that distance ahead, is waiting there with the racer, out of the van, all the equipment, cycle, everything ready to see when the guy who's pulling right now comes up, and this one, boom. And then the relay team shifts also are happening without wasting any time in slowing down. So it's a very efficient kind of machinery operation that you're talking about here. We don't do this in Deccan Cliffhanger because Deccan Cliffhanger doesn't have 8-people teams. And to be sure, in India, the situation is also very different, that our road conditions don't support something like this. So I'm just giving you this as two ends of the spectrum. The Irish team, on the other hand, was very laid back. Even though they had a lot of work to do, they were very chill, very laid back. Their goal was only to finish in 8 days. And they had a rollicking time. Every time we met them, they were just enjoying themselves, having fun. It was a really interesting thing to see how they were doing it. So their strategy would have been different, where they would have, maybe something like 10, 12 hours, one group of 4 just goes away and sleeps and maybe does their washing up or something like that and gets food ready, while 4 people are on the road, rotating their cycling duties and their driving duties. I think I mentioned to you how at Deccan Cliffhanger in the first edition, when I raced, also we had only one crew member. And The one crew member that we had actually couldn't drive the car after a point. So myself and my other crew member had to drive the car. In it. Only two of us could drive. That was me and Farad. So we ended up actually driving as well. But we could do it in the first DC. I won't recommend it. I won't allow it now. Forget recommending it. I won't allow it now. I know better now. So briefly to go over this was general strategy notes from a team called Team Ride Red at RAM. And so this is how you approach what is your strategy going to be. So they've listed down what they want to do and their main goal. So like I've talked about in our presentation before, that whenever you set up your goals, have a multi-tiered goal. Have your primary goal, what you want to do. Like I said, your primary goal can be I want to win the race, or I want to set the record, or whatever, and then have a slightly tempered down goal, and have a third goal also in case something goes wrong. So so their main goal was to finish in 7 days and 8 hours, which required an average speed in miles of 17 miles. Stretched goal. That is their baseline goal. But if things go well, they would like to stretch their goal to finishing in 7 days. And their fallback goal is, if they run into problems, is to basically just finish the race in, it's a 9-day cutoff at RAM, sorry. I thought it was 8 days. Finish within the 9-day cutoff. So, and then you go through a few other, points that you make over that. One of them being that though the race is going to be going on the whole way, in long distance racing, including Deccan Cliffhanger, I think Kabir talked about it last time. You start off just being conservative. Don't start on an adrenaline high, because you're going to have a low at some point later. So if you have something left, keep that, whatever leftover energy is there for racing at the end when you're fatigued and tired. But don't start off with a big boom and then decline. Just temper yourself, be conservative in the beginning, and then you have something left to pull towards the end. Then what could happen as teams is that you may understand who your competition is as you're approaching the end of a race. That's when you want to have something in you to actually race your opponents, rather than be too tired because you spent yourself doing some, in the beginning of the race. So keep this in mind. See, point number 3 over here, they say the same thing. We're not going to pay too much attention to other teams before, then get through the heat, get through the big mountain passes, and then that's the time that once you've not fallen behind on your targets, then you can think about racing. So after that, we'll see where we are relative to our goal and other teams, and assess rider conditions also. Then you've got to see how you're doing before we decide to push. There's another important point here, the very last point, that when you make a baseline plan, baseline plans will always need to be adapted once you go into race. Once you go into race, there will be small changes. Those changes, ones that are made intentionally or changes that happen, should always be incremental. So incremental means it should be, a 5 to 10% difference in what you planned versus what is taking place. Just bear that in mind. If you completely go off track, you're going to lose out on your goals of the race. So the strategy notes continue. You can, build up on these, build up your own strategy in this manner. So the base plan, they've got a rough base plan out here. The base plan is 20-minute pulls. This is for a team of 40. A team of 4, I beg your pardon. And they'll be doing approximately 6-hour shifts. And they've just mentioned that the shift for the crew will be 12 hours. This has to get integrated later on. Your shift for the crew also has to get integrated into this. So these are only guidelines. Again, point number... again, the third point out here, on the last section here, is when a rider's pull might be slightly shorter or longer, it should be in the order of 10%, not 50%. Okay, so changes should be small. Okay. So then when you come down to making a plan, for example, for Deccan Cliffhanger, you do a little bit of the maths here. So you calculate what your team targeted average is going to be, um, and then use this later on to decide at what locations your team is going to be, which control point you're going to pass at what time of the day. Then you look back to see how that affects your performance, or how the logistics need to be worked out according to where you're going to be at what time of the day. But that will come a little bit later. You'll start to apply this to your race a little later. In the first place, you do the maths, figure out, I've kept, even for team, I've just kept some off saddle time, because there, invariably will be some loss of time somewhere. So factor it in. If you don't do off saddle time as a relay team, that's great. Ideally there shouldn't be, but factoring it in as a cushion is a good idea. So the average speed required to be maintained if you're projecting to finish the race in 22 hours will be over 30 kmph, including your off saddle time, which gives you, how many kilometers do you need to cover every 4 hours. So you do all this calculation and keep it in front of you so that you can use it to do your planning. Yeah. And how many hours you'll take for every 100 kilometers is about 3 hours or 3.5 hours approximately. So you roughly know how long every 100 kilometers is going to take you. Then in the second part is depending on the number of people in your team. Depending on the number of people in your team, you'll know how many hours each member is going to do, how many kilometers each member is going to do, and now you start working with what your racers are capable of. So use each racer's data to make a plan of racer rotation. We'll come to racer rotation in the next slide. And this basically will give you an idea of locating yourself on a race route and the time of day that you're going to be there. This will help you to fine tune using your racer strengths. So what is the optimization that a team is looking to do? So a relay team is basically looking to optimize on a racer's requirement for rest versus how much a racer is able to output. So this is what you're trying to do. This is how you're going to think about your race plan. So with a 2-member team, for example, with 2-member team, the shorter your pull, the shorter the rest time that the resting racer is getting. So if one racer A is only doing 20 minutes on the bike, 20 minutes can be fast, but the one who's resting is only getting 20 minutes to rest before they go back on the bike, which means that ultimately in the long run, that is going to slow the average down. So that's what you have to keep in mind. If you have a 3-member team, off saddle time for each racer is going to be double of what your pull is. So you do know that you're going to get enough rest off time over there. So we come to optimizing your racer strength depends on the terrain. So the next slide, yeah. So basically now, once you've understood your environment, you start to understand the resources that you have. And in this situation, your resources are the racers, the ones who are going to be doing this race, keeping this average or going higher than this. Do a simple SWOT analysis, which basically, examines what are the strengths of each of the racers in your team. What are their weaknesses? So when we talk about strengths and weaknesses, it could be somebody likes to climb and is good at climbing, is fast on climbing. Somebody is really, really not able to do downhills, for example, or whatever, or somebody can't perform very well in the afternoon. Some other racer can't perform very well in the night. So you use all these to build up your plan. There's no point putting out somebody who's unable to perform at a certain time and forcing it. So when you make your racer plan, you understand their strengths and weaknesses. understand the opportunities that are there in the racer that you can use, the potential that they have that you can use, and also understand the challenges. So there may be different kinds of challenges that they each of them faces or is not able to cope with. So understand this, just do rough, brief SWOT analysis. Each of the racers will probably know their own SWOT, sorry, and work with that when you start developing the plan. So your rotations can be planned, for anything from, for Deccan Cliffhanger, for 2 to 4 people, I generally say, anything from 25 to 45 minutes is comfortable with, and you can do shorter pulls if you want on the uphills, and you can do longer pulls in the night to allow the teammates to be able to get a bit of sleep also, so that you're not sleep deprived on the bike. And then the final plan will be based on a bunch of variables which come over here, which are, it will depend on your team size, 2, 3, or 4 people teams, the strengths and the strategy that you develop. What is your goal? Are you just trying to finish the race in good time, or are you planning to target the records? Are you planning to win? Keeping these in mind, terrain ability of your racers, who's got the strengths to be able to, if it's a race which has a lot of climbing, like say Ultra Spice, for example, and you have a racer who's, only comfortable on flats, for example. So, or I mean, it wouldn't be a good idea to do that. Downhill, for example, we had in race around Austria, we had Bharat was not very good in downhills at that time. Later on, he's picked up those skills, but we had to make sure that for those long downhills on the Austrian Alps, we had to make sure that Darshan took over on the summits. Sleep cycles, people's own sleep cycles, health issues, if any, that you need to work in. And you have to integrate this whole thing with how your crew is going to change as well, and how the crew is going to perform and look after. So just roughly, I'm going to just I'm just going to take another 5 minutes to finish this so we can get on with the next part of our seminar. So this is, just a case study of the 2-person team at Race Around Austria, which was Darshan and Bharat. So here's how we integrated the whole thing. So on the left, extreme left, we have the crew, and we split up the crew into 2 teams. One was Team Chai and one was my team, Team D. And we were going to do our crew changes every 8 hours. And the reason to know this was to know approximately what distance each crew will have covered with the racers, or rather the racers will have covered, so that the new crew can say, okay, I have to cover 200 kilometers before to meet the next, to meet the changeover team. And then, of course, see, this reference number and location on map is how we interlaid this on the Race Around Austria's route, where we went over the route map and we understood that every 200 kilometers, what is our location going to be? This is the ballpark location at which we plan on doing a crew change. So the name of the place is also listed, and this is there with both the teams. And for the racer rotations, with Bharat and Darshan, when we did their, the simulation rides and the training rides here in India, what we understood, the optimal time for them to be on the bike was around 30 to 45 minutes. During that time, they were able to do 30 to 40 minutes pulls at a good average. After that, their average would start dipping. But 30 to 40 minutes was the good enough time for the resting rider to have got enough rest to be able to get out and ride again at the required average. And we did this on the similar terrain to Austria, similar kind of elevation gain we would try to, which was Lavasa and all the ghats over here and Khandala Ghat, up and down we did, so we understood this was the optimal kind of thing to go for. But in spite of that, because the alpine climbs were very long, in the Alps, while they were climbing, we started to switch the riders every 3 to 5 minutes, because there was no point because they're really steep climbs, and the rider, whoever's riding, 3 to 5 minutes at a really slow pace is bet they're going to burn out more than that. So we take, of course, we were equipped really well for it. We had a van with a side sliding door, so we didn't have to do too much of strapping on the bikes. We were just taking the bicycles inside the van, putting the next bicycle out for each of them, quickly doing it. The door stayed open the whole time that we were climbing the Ghats, climbing the Alps. And that's how we were able to maintain a fairly high average in the Alps over there. So every time we had one of those long climbs, we would switch. Then there was no 30 minutes and 40 minutes rest time. I think there's no point having a racer trying to, climb up something for 40 minutes. They're going to get completely finished in that time. And then the recovery requirement will be so much higher for that person who has climbed for 30 to 40 minutes that it's going to slow you down even later. It's not just during that time, but the slowing down is going to continue afterwards. So it's better to take them off. And we were only able to do this because this was Austria and there's no traffic and there's clean roads with, no pavement issue, like proper enough space to do this kind of a thing safely. And then, of course, in the night time, each of the racers was to get about 2 to 2.5 hours of break time to be able to sleep one whole sleep cycle. And that sleep cycle was decided depending on how they were feeling at the end of the day. Around 10 p.m. or so, when we were managing their dinner and things, we would ask them how they were feeling. Were they ready to ride for 2 hours while the other guy rested? Or did they want to rest for 2 hours and have the other racer do a long pull? So that was the only time in the night. So this is how you have a baseline plan of 30 to 40 minutes, and then you vary it depending on what your requirement is. And keep in mind that the motivation here always is to ensure that your average does not go down over the entire race. That's why you tweak it. Yeah. So also your racer nutrition plan, just have a chart ready of what they have to be fed and at what time, and make sure that they're doing it. And another thing which I have stressed upon during the presentation previously is continuously monitor what is going on. So your food plan, you've got a plan in place, but has the racer actually eaten it? Have you given it to the racer? Did the racer eat it? Has to be written down. Otherwise, 2 hours later, you find that your racer is not performing as well as he should be or she should be. And then you realize it's because, I haven't fed the guy anything, and the racer was too tired to even ask for food. So that's where you start losing out. So monitoring what's happening is important. Maintain a race log during the race. This is like super important. Always maintain a race log. If you we can zoom in here, you can see this is my handwriting in which I have sort of listed the time of change between Darshan and Bharat. Here it's from, so there's variations depending on some things were too fast. Then when they were too fast, I didn't bother to do it. It was every 2 or 3 minutes, I'm not going to do it. But oops, what did I do? Yeah, clear मैंने? हाँ. Okay, I think that was the last slide. Yeah. Slideshow. Yeah, that was the last slide. Yeah. Just one other point that I didn't mention while going through this was, you can have your plan and then just be prepared that the plan can also get completely shot down. And if that happens, you have to change. So my one experience of this was a team of 4 at Race Across America in 2013. There was a plan, every last detail had been written out for the entire plan, when the crew shifts are going to take place, when the racer shift is going to take place, how it's all going to be meshed in together. And in the first night itself, one racer had a physical problem and he had to be removed from the race and sent to hospital for 2-3 days. He joined us back again later. But from a 4-person team, we became a 3-person team, like in the very, first few hundred kilometers. So the whole plan went to bits. But we knew what average we had to maintain. We knew what distance we had to cover. Now the racers just had to do extra work, and the crew just had to come up with a whole other plan of being able to manage 3 racers instead of 4. So just keep that in mind as well. I'm just going to quickly. I think I want to open for questions now because it's better if we just take all the Q&A after Team Axis is done sharing their experiences of Deccan Cliffhanger, and then we can go into Q&A. I won't take the Q&A now. Fine. So Team Axis, I hope if you all are planning Ultra Spice or Race Across America, my presentation was helpful for you all also.
Yeah. Hi, this is Ashish. I'll be doing some small presentation on behalf of Team Axis to start with. Thank you, Divya. That was a very nice presentation, lot of learning for us also. Just to most of the points I think you have covered terms of also, but I would like to take that cue and just elaborate on some points which are already covered, but some additional input on that. The first point would be the purpose or goal of you participating in that race. We need to understand why we are doing this, whether it's going to be a fun event for us, whether it's going to be a race we want to go for a podium finish. So these points need to be considered when you are looking at your team composition. So if you want to just go in, have fun, then it's not an issue. You can have a good riding team and you are definitely going to finish that if you plan the entire thing properly. But if you want to attempt for a podium, then definitely the composition of team is going to be very critical. The quality of riders that you are going to bring in as your teammates is going to matter. And there, Divya mentioned about the SWOT analysis. Yes, that would definitely help. You should understand what your teammate can do and cannot do. Placing him in the right position would definitely help you achieve your goal. The SWOT analysis would not only apply to the team, it would really help if you do that for your crew also, because it is the crew who is going to help you win the race, not the riders. If they manage their duties efficiently, they will help you cross the line in the achieved in the targeted time. So here the role of your crew chief would come into play, and he should be the final authority to take the decisions on the road. The rider should not be taking any decisions on the road. That should be kept in mind by all the teams, because what happens if the riders start taking decisions, everything is going to go haywire. There might be a time when the crew chief will have to take a decision and push the rider to do his duty and not go by how he is feeling, because at the end of the day all the 4 riders or 3 riders or 2 riders are going to be tired. So if the crew chief starts taking accepting the physical or other troubles that the rider is facing, then the entire team plan is going to go haywire. So here the role of your crew chief is going to be very critical. So choosing a crew chief who understands all the riders in the team to the T would be very important, and then the rest of the crew members who are going to be part of that team. So everybody has to be explained what their roles are. There should be a clarity about that, so that when you are on the road, nothing has to be told, and that can be achieved if you do some nice trial rides on the same road if possible, if not on whatever roads you are doing your training. But the crew has to do a simulation on the road, so that a lot of things like changeovers between the riders, everything has to be practiced, handouts. There are a lot of rules which need to be complied to. So you need to, every crew member needs to understand the rules of the race, because if there is any wrongdoing on the rules, they are going to be penalized, and the riders are going to suffer because they are trying to achieve some X timing, and because of the penalties levied, time penalties levied, they are going to lose on that. So the crew and the crew chief has to be very clear about what they need to do on the road. Then Divya had taken us through the strategy part. Strategy would also mean you going on the route to do a small recce if possible of the entire route, if not of the critical parts. The route study in this case would be very important for you to plan your riding strategy, because that would give you a very clear idea how the route is going to play out, where the climbs are, where the flats are, where the terrain is going to be tricky. All those things can be considered for you to plan your rider strategy. When the which rider is going to go on road, which is going to come off, who is going to come off, so on and so forth. Third part would be the food planning, because it might be so that you might not be able to carry all your food stuff at the start of the race. So you might need to pick up some supplies on the route. So the recce of that route would probably help you to understand which are the good locations where you can take your supplies in. Next up would be your driver schedule. This being a race which is going to take at least 24 hours if you're on the faster side, and if not more than 24 hours, then you need to have a proper driver schedule. Who is going to drive? Do you have a driver who's capable of driving at night? The driving on the race route and driving as a normal driver, these are two entirely different things, because you will be driving at a very slow pace behind your rider. Most of the accidents in the race happen because of the riders, not because of the rider's mistake. It is most of the time it is because of the driver's mistake. The driver gets tired, gets sleepy because he is driving at a very slow pace which is not comfortable with, and he ends up hitting the rider in front of him. So the drivers chosen for the team have to be done so with clarity, that they are capable of doing their duties and they are used to this. So for them to get used to this kind of slow driving, probably it would help to have them drive behind you on your training rides. One very important point on the riding strategy would be driving strategy would also be your fuel plan, because on the route there are certain sections where you will not be having any access to the fuel. So you need to plan wherein you're going to fill up your cars, which car would go ahead and fill up, so that there is always a car available behind the rider. Next up would be the baggage plan. Divya mentioned that the riders would be having, a log should be maintained about what kind of feeding that a rider is being given, or whether he is having it at a proper time, so on and so forth. But in case of a 3-man team or a 4-man team, you might, or rather you will be having probably 2 cars or maybe more at times. In that case, you need to have a proper plan which ensures that the food is available in the car where the rider is going to be, because of the switching schedule, there might be a case where the rider ends up in the wrong car, and the preferred food for him is not available in that car. So a proper strategy for the food plan also has to be done. Then the entire thing, as we are planning, say it's going to be a plan A, it's going to be a plan B, plan C. So you need to plan for contingencies. When you plan for contingencies, there might be a case where we discussed about, Divya mentioned about the bare minimum averages that you need to maintain. If you have a particular timeline goal, you will be having your own charts wherein you will be targeting a particular average for that particular patch. There might be a time wherein a particular rider, for whatever reason, is not being able to perform. Then as you are aware, in the T20 matches, a pinch hitter is sent up the order to get the average up. So similar kind of strategy might have to be adopted in case of the average going down. So you should be ready with that plan for that. There might be some cases when you suddenly, there is a rider riding in his turn, he is taking his turn, and then suddenly he faces some kind of mechanicals. So the next rider should be available immediately to take up the ride. Otherwise, if that rider is of the mindset that I'll be doing my turn, say 20 minutes from now, and he is not ready, you will be ending up losing a lot of time to achieve that changeover. So you should always be ready for the contingencies or emergencies. Then we just touching up on the skill sets of the riders. So a training plan should be devised to achieve that enhancement of the skill set. Like Divya mentioned, Bharat was not so skilled while doing the downhills. A time might come wherein you might be forced to put in a rider who is not so good at that. So now is the time to form your team and try to develop the skill sets in an all-round fashion. In the event, you can put your best rider to do that, but the other rider also should be capable enough to take up that task in case of emergencies. Now, when we are doing a two-man team or a three-man team, there are going to be a lot of requirements by the riders in terms of changeovers, in terms of some specific requirements while riding. So maybe his hydration is not up to the mark, and he wants to have an extra bottle to be shared with him. So for all these things, you need to develop a kind of signal system which is very clear from the rider side and to the crew side. So the communication protocol should be established, and they have to be practiced while doing your training rides. This would help you a lot, especially during the night time when the visibility goes down and you're riding in the lights. So if there are some properly planned signals amongst yourself, these things would probably help you. Then you should plan properly about what you're going to have as your equipment. So all the bikes, all the lights, all the equipments that are going to go and into which car, they have to be tested and noted. So you know what is available in which car and at what place. So anything that is stacked up in your car, you should be available. You should be completely aware, or rather, the crew should be completely aware what is placed where, because at times during the critical moments at night times, you may end up spending a lot of time finding those things, and then because the rider is under pressure to achieve some average targets, the things get heated and unnecessary pressure is created. So if you have a very clear plan about your stacking options, you should be planning on that and practicing on that also. If possible, if you have a crew member who is an expert mechanic, or at least somebody who understands the bike, that would really help, because at times you might have to do some repairs on the go. So for example, your crew should probably practice doing a tube change while the car is in motion. That would probably help. I'm just trying to touch upon a thought, a possibility that might occur. There might be some more options also, but something like this could be thought of, and that would help you end up saving a lot of time. Next up would be the medical help. If possible, you should have a properly detailed out medical kit in the car, in probably in all the vehicles rather, and somebody in the car who understands what needs to be done. So basic medicine application, basic medical help. If the crew is trained for that, that would really probably help you achieve some fast remedial measures in case a rider gets hurt. Uh, just touching up briefly about our event experiences. I mean, when I talked about plan B, plan C, plan D, in the first edition where we participated as a team, it so happened that we had just climbed up the Pasarni Ghat, and we just had a changeover at the Mahabaleshwar bus stand junction, and the next rider had started descending for the Meda Ghat. So it was a simple thing. It was done very efficiently, and the next rider, he started descending the Meda Ghat. The rider who had just finished, he had got into the car, and the second car had started following up the rider. What happened was, after 4 to 5 turns into Meda Ghat, the rider who was riding had a mechanical, and luckily the rider who had just got off the bike, he was ready to take up that turn again. So that was a quick decision. The next car had already gone ahead as a follow car, but the riders were not supposed to ride immediately, so they were not ready. But luckily, we had a rider who had gotten off the bike, but he was still available to take up that turn. So something like that could be faced in these events, and you should be ready for that. When I mentioned pinch hitter kind of situation, we face similar situation during the night time, where we were competing with the another four-man team, and they were getting quite close. So we had to take a decision wherein we had to ask one of our riders who was the fastest rider to put in an extra effort and to create that gap, time gap which we wanted to target. So that was a decision taken by the crew chief of burning out that particular rider, because it was we knew that once that rider went in an all-out effort for a longer time, he wouldn't be available through the night. But that was a decision taken, and we that really helped us put in a lot of time margins, gaps between us and the next team. So these kind of on-the-go decisions would probably be needed to be taken by your crew chief, and the crew chief should understand the capability of all the riders. So if he does that, he will be in a better position to take such decisions. In the last attempt that we did, there was a change in our normal strategy. In the ghat sections also, we did multiple changes. So we had two riders who were attempting the ghat, but every 500 to 800 meters we did that change. Divya mentioned that they were doing those changes in the Alps. We attempted to do similar thing in the ghat sections, and we really put in a lot of time between us and the other team that we were targeting. So that was also something that we tried, and it really worked. But for that, you need to again have a crew which is extremely efficient, extremely trained, and you need to practice those things on the road, because these things cannot be attempted in the race. You will end up losing time rather than gaining time. About the driver skill sets I talked about, we had our drivers who could actually drive for the entire event unchanged. So we were lucky, rather we are lucky to have riders, drivers who can do that. So if you have a teammate who has that specific skill set, that would really help you plan your options. Then I think I've covered up most of the points that I wanted to brief you about. I'll hand over the thing to Maithili.
Hi.
Thanks, Ashish.
Okay, so I will share my experiences as a very ordinary rider when I entered this event. So my first exposure to ultra cycling was DC 2015, where I was a crew member, and after that I participated in the 2016 DC in team of 4, then in team of 2 in 2017 with my husband Mahesh, and again in 2019 as a team of 2 under the banner of Team Axis. And thanks to Divya for particularly encouraging women participants. I was just going through the names of the participants here. I can see there are, I think, 6 or 7 lady women participants, and I am really hoping that this year, Divya, we should have more number of women participating in this edition. So and I can see some riders are really very good riders, like I can see Nita here. So my experiences would be particularly for those who are new to ultra cycling or maybe participating in DC for the first time. The reason for specifically mentioning this, because like I said, my first exposure to ultra cycling was DC 2015, where when I was a crew, and I had never thought that next year I would be riding in the this particular event. So in my experience, the preparations, so Ashish and Divya have covered majority of the points, but I'll share a couple of experiences which might definitely help the new riders. I think mental preparation is very, very important, because if you are new to this kind of an event, it's going to take a lot of mental preparation for you, because there are so many variables involved. There would be many uncertainties which you, in spite of preparing very well. So mental preparation, ready to take over any, I wouldn't say, rather I would say challenge. particularly when the race is about to end. When you enter Goa, the rolling terrain is a really great challenge. So you should be very well prepared. So race preparations are very, very important. I will mention a few things like you should do practice rides on the route along with the crew, particularly for two persons team. You have very less time for changeovers, or maybe whatever strategy you have decided, you are only two members who are going to take over one after the other. So what me and Mahesh did, we did lots of rides along with the crew, and we also went in for route recce. And within us, we decided, because the problem is, if you have heavy traffic on route, then even your crew decides to stop at a particular point for a changeover, both the riders should be very clear. Even if you don't see the car there, you should be very clear at what point you should be stopping. So both of us, we went for a recce in our car, and we decided that, okay, this particular hotel, even we clicked some photographs of some signages, some particular important landmarks, and we communicated all these points to the crew members. So such kind of very minute preparations are going to definitely help you. This is now hopefully for all of you, the monsoon will allow you to start your practices now. Now, preparations are so crucial, whether you are doing it indoors or you are you are going outdoors for these rides. I will just share my experience of 2019 DC, that it was just 1 month, the race was just 1 month away, and I was diagnosed with herpes infection to my right hand. And under Santosh sir's guidance, I did 1 month training on home trainer, because I was not able to go out, but that really helped. So all such things which are going to suit you, you should start working on it. Identify, particularly in case of 2 men or 2-member team, you should identify your strengths. You should follow all the plan. Another important point here is sleep management. That's very, very crucial. Now, it so happened that we should be, particularly as regards sleep management, I remember there was one point where I was to take over, and so there was some last minute changes which were required because of sleep management issue. So last minute changes, you should all be very well mentally prepared to take over, because when your turn is about to end, you are mentally relaxed, you look forward for some break, but then if there is a need, you should be able to continue riding. So even for particularly ghats, we made it a point that we have complete strategy in place, particularly for ghats in two-member team. So these are some points, and specifically for women, if you have a lady member in your crew, that will help, but it's up to you. If you have already done this race, then you will be aware of all the hotels or whatever points on the route. If you are the first timer, make sure that you go on recce of the route, and you have trial rides on the route. Make sure you make it a point that you know which hotel has good clean washrooms if you want to change over, because for women participants, I think this is a very important point, that your crew and you should be aware of all such important places where you should be able to comfortably change, and whatever is your requirement. So these are some specific points for a 2-member team. You have to remember that you are only two. When you are in 4-member team, then you are a little more relaxed, but it's a bit challenging for 2-member team. So this is what I had to share about my experiences. Over to Santosh sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Maithili. Thanks, Maithili. Thanks, Ashish. And Santosh is here. Yeah. No, not able to hear you, Santosh. Not able to hear you.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Are you able to hear now?
Yeah, we're able to hear you now. Thanks.
Good evening, Divya. Thanks for giving us an opportunity. I'll give some inputs on the training things. Basically, when we start our training, first important thing is you should do the bike fit. That bike fit is very much important. Otherwise, many of the times we land on some or the other injuries. The next important factor is the bike which you are going to ride should be well maintained. If the bike is not well maintained, there is a very much possibility it will fail, it will occur to some maintenance thing during the event itself. So that is very much important. The third important structure for the training is you should do some gym work to gain strength training. Along with that, you should also do stretching, well maintained diet plan is very much required. When you start training, avoid riding too long in the initial phase. Remember, when you start riding, eat and drink before you get too much thirsty or hungry. And each and every ride should start with a warm up and should end with the cool down. When you actually start training, some of the points I would like to mention here is break the training sessions in different variables. One point is climbing. You should do climbing training. Second is VO2 max training. Third is interval. Fourth is endurance. And the fifth is active recovery easy ride. Many of us, we don't do this active recovery easy ride. And there should be one day in your training wherein you guys should take off. I mean to say, for all the training, like you should not even do gym, you should not do cycling, you should not do, it's a complete rest day for all the activities. This is very much important. Normally what we do is we go out and do training, we ride, the next day we do some gym work, but we don't give attention to these rest day at all. If you don't rest, your body will not recover, and then surely at the point of the event, it's bound to happen, it will not give you the output what was required. So these are the important training things I would like to mention. I will hand it over to Divya now.
Hi, thanks. Thank you, Santosh. Thanks,
Divya.
Ashish, and hi. Yeah, can you hear me? Are people able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. Thank you, Santosh, Ashish, and Maithili. It was great to have your sharing, your experience and how to prepare for participation in Deccan Cliffhanger as a relay team. In fact, I had a couple of questions before I throw it open for everyone for their questions. One of the questions I was interested in is uh, for Santosh and Ashish, who were there from the first Deccan Cliffhanger, in which you all took part as a team of four, and 2019. So that there's a gap of about 4 years. You first team participation was in 2015, team of four, and then you did a team of four again in 2019. So how was the experience different uh, from for you? How was it different in terms of approach and planning, and how was the actual execution also? What were the differences in it?
Yeah. Um, the first attempt we made, we were not aware how this race goes. For us also, it was the first attempt at a race which was involving a team. Our crew was also doing it for the first time, so everything was new. That we maintained a log. As you also mentioned about maintaining a log, so we maintained a log. We analyzed that after our race. We checked up what went wrong at some points, which we could probably improve on in our next attempt, and all those points were noted and executed to the T in our next attempt. So that's what helped us. We had just to mention about the logs. We had a log, or rather a clear-cut instruction sheet in the vehicle, in all our vehicles, which specified who gets out of the car from which side also. So, because in the heat of the moment, the safety becomes very critical, and at night times, because if the rider demands something and you want to respond in the fastest possible time, you might end up doing that mistake. So all those instructions were written inside the car also, and these were fine-tuned in our next attempt, which really helped us improve on our timings also. And what I would like to mention here is, in our third attempt, first attempt, we had 4 crew members: I, myself, Santosh sir, Vishal sir, and Anand Gangwal. In our second attempt, we had a change in the crew. Santosh sir, Vishal sir were there instead of Anand. Vijay, our other riding partner, he participated. In our third attempt, again, we returned back to our original crew. And last year, we did something different. We had a crew which had been with us for all our 3 successful podium finishes. Last year, it was our crew who rode as our team, and they again ended up finishing on the podium as the winners. So that was a different thing that we did, and we ended up pulling it off.
Yeah, nice. That's great to hear that. In fact, I do see that at DC and Ultra Spice quite often, that the crew and the racers of group which is coming on a regular basis, they change and take turns with each other. 1 year race, 1 year crewing, this kind of thing. Good. Last year, 2019, I think team of four was. Were you all the fastest to the finish? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
No, we won the race.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, and also y'all were the fastest to arrive at the finish, right? I
Yes,
think
yes.
amongst the teams, because we have a award just for everybody to know out here. Inspire India has created many awards, of which one of the awards is a relay team award which is named after uh, Arham Vedante. Raced a couple of years. There was a group of young boys who was racing in the under. What is that age group? Under 35, right? Yeah, under 35 age group, and they've set the fastest team record so far. So all relay teams reaching fastest to the finish line, whichever category, whichever age group, etc. There's an award for that, just for people to know that. And to achieve awards like that, for sure, attending these seminars and applying what you're learning out here is really important. Building efficiency into the way you do it, and like Ashish mentioned about safety, I love it when you tell me that you have a rule for which side of the car people are allowed. And so see, at Inspire India, for us, one of the biggest challenges is maintaining safety in these long races, and we design our rules accordingly. But small things like this coming from within the racing community and participants itself is really important. You have to be looking after yours and your crew's safety on your own. Sleep, like you mentioned, and something like this, ensuring that in that haste and in that intense moment at that point, you don't just forget completely about safety issues. You take care of yourself throughout, and that takes some effort to build it in, so that you're just doing it subconsciously, without any effort, without thinking about it. Yeah.
Safety, and I'll be adding one more point to this: safety and the rules to be followed, because each and every crew member of ours was very well aware of the rules to be followed. Like evening 6 o'clock, everybody should be with the reflectors. The driver who was not supposed to get down, still he was wearing that jacket. So in case of any evidence, it should not happen. He just got down and
penalty. Yeah. So
we did not leave any point wherein a penalty clause will be applicable to us.
Yeah. Because penalties are a really tough thing, because the racers are working so hard for every minute to save every minute to save every this thing. The crew is also on the whole working hard to ensure no time is wasted in between, and then one small error, one small slip up, and there's a penalty of 15 minutes, and you just lose 15 minutes immediately, and it can be the difference between a podium finish or not. And for sure at Inspire India also now, as we have also evolved, we've also become much stricter about applying the penalties on the road, being out there and keeping an eye on things. So
कॉल चालू था
okay, so I'll just open it for questions for everybody. Just don't unmute and just start asking the question. At the bottom of your screen, there's a button which says reactions. If you click on that, you can raise your hand. Just raise your hand and I will call out for any Q&A. Do anyone have any questions related to relay team, planning, strategy, anything else? No? Vikas. Can Vikas please go ahead and unmute yourself?
Good evening, Digha ma'am. Can you hear my voice, ma'am?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, ma'am. The lady speaker who was speaking, she was telling about the route recce. So basically, we are all from Baroda, Gujarat. So it would be difficult for us to do a route recce all the way coming to Pune and Goa. And we are all first timers. Basically, for me, I have done a lot of endurance events, BRMs. I participated in PVP also. So racing is something which is very new to me as far as this particular distance is concerned. So, and what would be the strategy for the first timers and without any route recce? So that's what query was really.
So to be frank, route recce's, like you said, they're really difficult. And in fact, this point was occurring to me while Maithili was talking, that for sure those who are in Maharashtra at least or from Goa will be able to do a route recce for a race like DC. But even the same group of people, say, wanting to do Ultra Spice, it's not going to be possible to do a route recce. So we've had some teams and people from who do Deccan Cliffhanger regularly who've now started doing Ultra Spice, and you can't do a route recce. Race Across America, obviously, an international race, you can't do a route recce. So what do you do instead? So what you do instead is you can do a lot of homework online. So you have the route, you can closely observe all aspects of your route. You can go through the navigation. We provide you with all the navigation tools. We provide you with turn by turn details Of course, like I've mentioned the route, the race handbook to you will have step-by-step route navigation cue sheet, which even mentions cautions that you can keep in mind when you're going on the route. In addition to that, for places to refuel, for places where you can use toilets or pick up food, etc. Google Maps is great. So I've been planning races, I've been planning brevets and routes without going on the road myself by doing 80% of the homework sitting at home, and stuff is laid out. Then, of course, as a race organizer or the event organizer, I will go out on the route. But most of my work is already done by just using these tools. So when it comes to just gathering all the information that you can, you just use other ways of gathering as much information as you can about any route, and prepare it down to as much detail as you can. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Thanks, ma'am. And when you'll be able to get the final route for DC?
For DC, will be after the rains stop. So I've mentioned this. I think this question came up in the previous seminar also. The challenge with the Deccan Cliffhanger route is that it goes up and down mountains, and it finally descends to Goa through forested mountain roads, which invariably get damaged during the rains. So there are, 2 or 3 different options over there, and then there's the options of climbing up to Mahabaleshwar, and the descent also has options. We've used permutations and combinations every year because the rain will wash away one road and then we have to find something else. So, basically it's Pune to Goa and it's 640 kilometers, and expect the terrain to be challenging. The final route can only be declared like much later. So you can just go over the existing routes right now, which have been done in the past 2 years. And then, in probably end of September is the earliest that I foresee we'll be able to go and do, because after the rains have washed away the roads, I have to wait and pray that some repair work will be done. Then I go out and do the route recce. And even after the route recce, we have had 1 year in which it rained 2 weeks before Deccan Cliffhanger. And 2 weeks before Deccan Cliffhanger, we had to change the route because one of the roads had a landslide. So, yeah, thanks. Jitesh?
Can Maithili or somebody from the team do a more deep dive on how they had, done the climb strategy between the riders, because it was a 2-member team. And if some more details can be shared, how they had really done it.
Okay, so in our case, just a second, there is an echo. So me and my husband Mahesh, we were a team of 2. Obviously, there was, as expected, there was a difference in the capacity of doing climbs. You won't believe that when we started from the start point of, from Bhugav till Chandni Chowk, even that was a flat terrain, we changed, I think, 3 or 4 times. So for Khambatki and Pasarni, I remember we had 4 changeovers, and for Khambatki 3. So it all depends on what is your each rider's strength. And I think there is no harm till the time the crew is able to manage the changeovers. There is absolutely no problem in as many changeovers as required by both the riders, particularly. So this was our case of team of 2.
Sorry to interrupt, Maithili. If you can just give a little bit
Maybe
more.
Ashish can add for team of 4.
Yeah, can I be heard? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
Divya, go
now
ahead.
we can.
Yeah. So, no, Maithili, I was just saying that can you just add some details to, like, because the names Kambatki and Pasarni don't really mean anything to the participants. If you can give a little bit more about the distance of the climb, what kind of elevation it is, and how you, like Pasarni, Kambatki, they don't
Okay.
know the route as well.
I really don't have just. I could not hear you in the end, Divya.
I was saying that the names of the ghats don't mean anything to them because they don't know the route. So if you can give the distances that they're each ghat and how it changed accordingly, what you were climbing.
I could guess. I could not hear you properly, but I could understand that you want me to give some more details about it. So right now I don't have exact values of elevation gain. So I won't be able to explain it in details. I don't have those figures in front of me. Elevation of Kambatki, elevation of Pasarni.
Okay. Okay.
Divya, we can't hear you. We cannot hear you.
Oh. Yeah, can I be heard now? I have no
Yeah,
idea.
perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I
We can
think
hear you perfectly.
there may be some issue at with Maithili. Maithili, maybe you shut down your speakers or lowered your speakers for the echo. I think because of the echo, this thing that.
Now
Yeah,
we could hear.
I think the issue, your speakers were turned down because of the echo issue, I think. Yeah. Yeah, Jitesh, is that,
Yes.
did that answer your question?
I believe maybe so my question was, maybe if she can release or other team members can say what type of, like, it was very short distances, like 10-15 minutes they were doing a changeover during the climbs, or it was like doing for a bit 40 minutes or something like that. What type of strategy was there that was?
Hi, Jitesh. This is Ashish. Basically, number one, the strategy from our side in our first attempt was different than what we did in our second attempt. There were changes in the routes. There were some restrictions which were there in the second attempt. In the first attempt, all the vehicles were allowed to go up there's a ghat, Mahabeshwar Ghat, so all the vehicles were allowed to go up that ghat. But in our second attempt, there were some road issues there and only one follow vehicle was allowed. So based on that also the strategy had to change, number one. Number two, the ghat approximately Pasarni Ghat, the main critical part is around 10 kilometers, you could say. Then you have a flat and then there is a rolling section till the Mahabeshwar junction. So in an 11 kilometers climb, basically you are not expected to do a 30 or 40-minute stretch. That won't really help you. If you want to have a faster time, then you have to have an efficient change, or say every 500 meters, you go do a allowed pull and maybe do a change again in 500 meters. That would probably help you. But this again depends on the capabilities and credentials of the riders. It cannot be one shoe fits all. So you need to understand your own strengths. In case you are able to pull it off, yes, you should go for something like that. If not, if you have got only one rider who is really capable of doing a good climb, then it would probably make sense to ask him to do the entire climb, but at a very steady pace, because he, again, if he burns out, he is not going to be of any use, or maybe his performance is going to go down in the second part of the race. So that again is going to have to be your call based on the your rider's capabilities.
And in our case, since we were able to do practice rides on the route. For all practical purposes and for easy communication with the crew, we decided certain landmarks. So it was not based on some distance per se. And in ghats, like Ashish mentioned, it's very important for you to remember the stopping point should be very easy for changeovers also. So in Khambatki, we decided certain specific points in relation to some specific landmarks. But since we were able to do practice rides there, it was easy for us.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks, Divya. That
Yeah.
gives a good insight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jitesh, so over the years, what I've observed is that on these climbs, which are anything from 5-6 kilometers long to about 10-12 kilometers long, the best thing is what we mentioned, that there's no point having a rested rider sitting in the vehicle and you're burning out a racer on the bike. It's better to find some kind of an optimum where you pull out the racer who's resting if they've had enough rest, like 15-20 minutes. For a short while, you can do that. So 12 to 20 minutes pulls on the steeper climbs should kind of work. Like what Ashish also mentioned is that the other issue with Pasarni is that there's a lot of traffic. So it is about an 11-kilometer climb, but it's usually on a Saturday morning and there's a lot of traffic there. So you may have this great plan in place that you're going to do pulls of about 15 to 20 minutes, but then you get over there and it's impossible for the car to pull out. And again, it's a part of our rules. We strictly tell people not to, obstruct traffic. Not to park anywhere, and you can't have a backup of traffic behind you because you're changing your rider. So you may go in with this plan but then find it impossible to actually do a racer change, because every time you change a racer, it means pulling off the road, pulling out their bicycle, pulling out their helmet, getting the racer out, then you're waiting on the roadside until the other racer comes up. There may be another car with the other racer, depending on whether we allow it or not. So there has to be enough space for you to do all this. So ideal situation may be 15-20 minutes, but you may not actually be able to do that. So you have to take a call on the go. Yeah. Thanks. Rohit Dandekar. Rohit has actually participated in Deccan Cliffhanger and in Ultra Spice as team. Did you have a question or is there something you would like to share, Rohit?
No, I just wanted to talk about this elevation gains. I think Khambatki Ghat is what 4%, 5% average. It's not so bad, and the length is also not so much. It's what about 6-7 kilometers at the most. And what strategy we planned for Ultra Spice, especially because we had 24-kilometer climb for this Jog Falls, and then there was another big climb of 11 kilometers at Chikmagalur.
Right.
So we were switching, and basically the gradient is quite gradual. It's not going up suddenly or dropping down. So we were switching every 3 to 4 kilometers depending on our energy levels, basically only for the climbs.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thanks for sharing that. Just to introduce Rohit, like I said, Rohit and his brother Kaustubh have done the Ultra Spice. How many kilometers did you do as a two-person team?
1,000. It was 1,000
kilometers. Okay. Yeah. And last year, Kaustubh attempted 1,200
solo.
RQ solo also. Yeah. So Rohit, Kaustubh and their gang is also one of the regulars at our races. Good to have you here.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Rohit. Any other questions from anyone? Just raise your hand. Yes, Vikas.
Okay. I just wanted to ask what type of car you would recommend for a lead?
What type of what?
Car, crew car.
Vehicle. Any vehicle can be used, but I mean, hatchbacks are really difficult to fit all your stuff inside. So something with a boot, But we've seen all kinds of vehicles, from hatchbacks to Innovas are really comfortable. If you have access to one, that's great. Wingers are not allowed. If you got the joke. But just kidding. Yeah. Any other questions? No, great. Yeah, I hope that those of you who are doing your relay team. Sorry? No. Okay. All right, great. I think we'll wrap up the session now. I'm looking forward to having everybody race really well at Deccan Cliffhanger, Ultra Spice, or any of these races coming up now with good plans. Thank you so much, Team Axis, Ashish, Maithili. Thanks, Rohit, for sharing also. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Bye for now. Bye.
Bye.